Hi guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with the best bans for patch 2.4C. So now of course I did do one for 2.4B, and you know 2.4C is gonna last until 13th of October, where 2.5 is gonna release. So we have still a good over 2 weeks that we're going to be in this patch, so this is still going to be a really useful video. Of course, I've taken my time to sort of see what the meta is like and who is good to ban. Some bans are gone, like for example Akshan, which is very popular in last patch, but in the current patch most people have realized he's not as good as they thought he was after his buff, so he's not in the list anymore. And also in the background, of course, we have the High Noon Lucian gameplay. Now, of course, I did say in my Lucian video that I picked up the skin, but I wasn't using it in that video because I wanted to have one last match on the regular Lucian. But here we have, you know, the non-clickbait real, you know, High Noon Lucian in action, so you guys can enjoy the skin as I discussed the bans. So another change we have in this video is, in the last video, I did say that I wanted the format to be 2 bans per role, and then plus honorable mentions. But then I realized later on, when I was thinking about it, I realized that sometimes some roles just require more bans than some others. Like for example, let's say mid lane probably warrants more than 2 bans to be put on the list, whereas some other roles like what I mentioned, ADC, I genuinely don't think any ADC is actually worth banning, in my personal opinion. I believe that the ADC role is generally quite balanced, and I don't think that unless you hate playing against someone like, for example, Draven, I don't think that you really need to ban any ADC, like even if you're playing the ADC role like I am. So playing ADC, I never actually ban any other ADCs. What I ban is actually what you will find in this list in the top 3. Which leads me to the next change, which is where I will actually do this in a 10-to-1 format. So 10 is the one that I think it's in the 10th place of bans, and number 1 is the one I think that should be banned in every single game. So obviously I banned personally ban number 1, ban number 2, and ban number 3, which you guys will see towards the end of the video. So but without further ado, after having to re-explain the format of the video, let's actually jump into the actual meat of the video. So for the 10th place, I've actually cheated a little bit. What a surprise there. I actually have Fizz and Zed both there. Now, reason being is that genuinely I feel Fizz and Zed, they both do about the same thing, but they're just, one is AP and one is AD. They're both one-shot assassins that generally focus on one-shotting a particular target, normally the enemy mid laner or the enemy marksman. They focus on one-shotting a target, and then they start snowballing. And they try to build a lead off there to a point where they can pretty much one-shot anybody they want in the game, of course, aside from tanks. So, first up, I don't think they're as big of a threat compared to other characters because they're mostly single target. Zed and Fizz, yes, they can actually target multiple people with abilities like Zed's shurikens or Fizz's playful trickster. However, their main point is to take out one particular person, so their threat is not as big as some other champions who have AoE and can one-shot multiple people. However, they are still a threat that when they're snowballing, they can get out of control, and you know the game is just done and over with. So now in the 9th place, I actually have a support, which is the only support you'll find on the list, which is actually Lulu. Personally, I think she's the only support actually worth banning, just because she enables a lot of characters. For example, Lulu paired up with Jinx, paired up with Vayne, and even paired up with non-ADCs like, for example, Olaf or Riven. She can just make these picks unstoppable. Like Olaf on his own may not really be that good, but Olaf with a Lulu giving him attack speed, giving him shields, giving him her ult for more health and more survivability. Now that is a scary Olaf. Now she can do this with pretty much I would say actually any character, but she's very effective at buffing up select characters like the 4 that I have named, and of course other than that some other characters as well. But you know, Lulu can be a huge problem, especially if there's one of these particular characters in her team that definitely benefits a lot from her getting buffed. But of course Lulu is sort of dependent on her team and is not as reliable, so I would say that in 5-man it's probably good to ban Lulu, but in solo queue maybe not so much because it does require some kind of coordination. Now, at number 8, we actually have Nunu. Now, Nunu, of course, is part of the newest addition with Brand and Nunu added to the game. However, Nunu already is becoming a huge problem. Now, his ganks are just insane. When he comes in with his snowball, if he has rolled it properly, like to a decent size, you're gonna get knocked up, chain CC'd by whoever else has CC in that particular lane, then chain CC'd by Nunu's root, and then basically just get destroyed by whoever is there. Now, of course, Nunu does take some skill to learn, especially when it comes to the snowball, and he is a very gank-reliant champion who is not good at farming or anything else, really. So, Nunu is also to some extent dependent on his team, especially since he builds tank, and he also needs his teammates to generally follow up because he can't gank by himself and like one-shot the enemy. So, Nunu finds himself a little bit lower on the list, but Nunu is still definitely probably the most potent ganker. You know, maybe like Lee Sin can compete with him, but he's a very, very potent ganker, and you don't want to be kind of running into him if you can help it. Now, number 7, who was actually in our honorable mentions previously, is actually now in our main list and finding himself at number 7, which is Ziggs. Now, Ziggs, first up, he's actually a flex pick that can be flexed into AD carry, although it's not very common, but I have played it myself. He has everything. He has great scaling, great damage, you know, great poke, great objective control, great map presence with his ultimate, great tower taking potential with his passive and his W, safety as well with his range and his W, and basically he has just so much going for him with the Luden's buffs. He's also so much more powerful now in the earlier stages of the game. So Ziggs, you know, just gotta ban him. It's as simple as that. Now, number 6, we actually have perhaps what might be a little bit of a more controversial pick, which is Camille. Camille can actually be flexed between two roles, which is jungle and top, so or Baron lane. So in both roles, she is very good. In the jungle, her ganks are very, very good with her E and her ultimate. Like pretty much if you gank with your ultimate, and as long as the enemy is not like under their tower or something, as long as they're in like a neutral position, pretty much the ult just guarantees the kill because they cannot escape. And in the Baron lane as well, she has so much going for her. She has her passive, which gives her, you know, 20% shield. She has her Q, which does true damage. Her W, which slows and heals herself as well. Her E, which gives her mobility as well as a stun, and her ult, which just gives single target lockdown. And in the later stages of the game, she's not only a backline dive threat with her E and her ultimate, she's also a split push threat. So there's more than one way you can actually play Camille. So Camille is also pretty decent in team fights, although she's technically relatively single target. But you know, if you can lock down the single target in the team fights and disrupt the team fight with your ultimate, you're still going to be useful. So generally, she's just a pretty powerful pick in general. Now, number 5, to nobody's surprise, is yet another Baron laner. It's Fiora. Now, Fiora has been good for, I don't even know how many patches at this point in time. She's been good for so long that it's hard to remember a time when she wasn't good. And even when she so-called wasn't in the meta, it's just because people haven't really discovered her yet. It wasn't necessarily because she was bad. So pretty much she has always really been in the meta. So Fiora is just, you know, she's the best 1v1 champion in the game, the best split pusher in the game. And yeah, if you're good at Fiora and you will always win your lane, you'll always get a hit on Fiora, and you'll always be a threat on Fiora. You know, Fiora has so many tools. He has a low cooldown lunge, low cooldown dash. She has her repose, which can immune her from all abilities, and CC as well. And yes, just true damage on her passive and her ultimate as well. She just does so much, and you always want to ban Fiora because, you know, you never know when there's a good Fiora in the game, and you don't want to be running into a good Fiora who will definitely ruin your day, regardless of what kind of role you play. Now, number 4, barely above Fiora, is actually another Baron lane pick, which is Riven. Now, Riven's stock has actually soared through the roof in this particular patch. Now, Riven I see getting picked non-stop in both the jungle role as well as the, of course, Baron lane role, which is her more popular pick. And personally, I actually think she's very good in the jungle as well. Now, she has her 2-item Power Spike of Black Cleaver and Death's Dance. When you get to that point, pretty much you will wreck everybody unless you're jumping in 1v5. And I have even seen Rivens jumping in 1v5 and even killing like 3 people before she dies. Or jumping in 1v5, kill like 2-3 people, she escapes with a sliver of health, and her team cleans up the rest of the fight. Riven is that insane just with her Black Cleaver and her Death's Dance. And even without any items, if you are a good Riven, you pretty much will win lane. There's very few lane matchups you lose against, of course Fiora being one of them, but aside from that, there's very few lane matchups you actually lose against. So Riven is just very lane dominant. It is a winning lane in the Baron lane majority of the time. You get a hit, you know, even if you don't solo kill them, you get a hit in terms of CS, in terms of pressure. You can influence other areas of the map, get a hit through that way, and, you know, just carry the game, you know, on your own. She's kind of a huge 1v9 kind of threat. Unlike Fiora and Camille, that even when you're very ahead, you're more of a split push threat, and you're not really a 1v9 threat, which is the main reason why I put Riven above the two of them, because in solo queue, being a 1v9 threat is a lot more important. Now into the top 3, which, as I mentioned, are the 3 bans that I personally go for every single game. One of the 3 of them, depending on, you know, the matchup or what my team hovers and whatnot. So number 3, we actually have Akali. Now Akali, as we know, just got nerfed like 2 patches ago. However, you know, that has only led to people underestimating her. The fact of the matter is always the same. Like, it always seems that Akali gets nerfed, but if you are a good Akali, the nerfs, I wouldn't say that it doesn't matter, but you can barely even see it on a good Akali. Like, on good Akalis, the nerfs seem to not exist, and if you are good at Akali, you know, you will just wreck the game. Like, you may not wreck your lane, but you roam, you get a double kill, you roam, you get a kill, you just snowball off your kills, and, you know, you just get to a point where you can pretty much one combo any backline, and, you know, it just becomes absurd. And even Akali is not even that bad into tanks, because if she Q passive on the tanks, she can eventually even kill tanks. So Akali is just too insane. She has to be banned, no doubt about it. Now number 2, I'm not sure what was that. Number 2, we have Lee Sin. Now Lee Sin, in my opinion, is the best jungler by a mile. Like, to me, no one is even close. Lee Sin just does so much. He has so much early game damage, so much early game pressure, and so much agency. You know, he can do so much with his early game aggression, get his team a hit, get himself a hit, and there is very little you can do, honestly, as anybody in the game. Like, if you're the enemy jungle against Lee Sin, what can you really do about it? If you're an enemy laner against the Lee Sin, he comes in for a gank. Other than running away, what can you really do about it? Like, who can really fight Lee Sin in the early game? If you're foolish enough to do so, he gets a hit. If you don't, you still lose out in terms of pressure, in terms of losing CS, in terms of having to recall, in terms of losing tower plates, everything else. So Lee Sin, really, if you're a good Lee Sin, and I've seen so many of these in ranked, if you're a good Lee Sin, you know, you can just take over a game from minute 1. So yeah, Lee Sin has to be banned. And number 1 to be banned is Brand. Now, Brand, he recently got hotfix nerfed, and obviously you guys know the drill. If anybody ever gets hotfix nerfed, you know that they must be super duper OP, like Lulu or Orianna back in the day, who got hotfix nerfed as well, Rengar as well. Like, if you're getting hotfix nerfed, you have to be really, really strong. Now, of course, that being the case, he has already been nerfed. So, despite the fact that he has already been nerfed, he is just still so strong. Like there's not too much to say, but he's still so strong. His damage is just absurd. Like, even at earlier levels, before you even get items, if you one combo someone, pretty much 3/4 of their health is gone, and, you know, if they're already like half health or what, your combo will kill them for sure. And his main threat, and why he's at number 1, is his team fight presence. Now, his ultimate, while they have nerfed it so that it has a little bit more counterplay, it doesn't really matter. Like, teams in solo queue, they are not coordinated, so they are still going to group together, and if they try to split up, either it's not going to be successful, they're still going to get hit, or they split up and they die to the enemy team because they're not grouped. So either way, Brand's ultimate in team fights just brings way too much to the table. Like, it just ruins your team, because if you play into Brand, you stay together, he ults, you all get destroyed by Brand. If you split apart and he doesn't manage to ult properly, you still die because your team is split up and their team is not, and you get picked off one by one. So there really is no winning against Brand. So in my opinion, for now, since he's still very strong, just ban the guy. And with that, we have come to the end of the game and the end of the video as well. So as usual, you guys can see the stats for this particular Lucian gameplay. So thank you guys for watching the video, and goodbye.